This episode of Getting Geeky with Game Relief is brought to you by BattleGrip.com. It's about all the old games, all the old toys in the 1970s and the 1879s.
Or how about the 1970s, 80s, and 90s?
So they have Hello Kitty, Cabbage Patch Kids, Little Twin Stars, My Melody, Texo Sam, and He-Man, and there are some other ones, but yeah,
Getting Geeky with Gamer Leaf, the podcast in which one man strives to level up his geekhood and helping you do the same, one battle at a time. Now, let's get geeky with Gamer Leaf.
In this episode of Getting Geeky with Game Relief, I am graced by the presence of the all-famous, all-knowing Richard Bliss, who runs the Kickstarter, the podcast. I am graced by the presence of the all-famous, all-knowing Richard Bliss, who is the star and founder of Funding the Dream on Kickstarter. It's a podcast for Kickstarters. And you guessed it, it's Wishlist Wednesday, so here we go. This episode is all about me on a cell phone. I'm actually talking to him on a cell phone. Never done that before, so hopefully it works out okay for you. Thank you.
Let's see here. So, I vaguely remember hearing about Mousetrap. Do you know, I know they were in Utah at Lagoon. There was a ride that was pretty famous called Mousetrap. Do you know if that was inspired off after that, or have you ever heard of that ride?
I don't know. It might have been, and I have heard of the ride, and I have been to Lagoon, but I don't remember the ride. But Mousetrap was a game, a three-dimensional game where you would, those games where the guy tips over and knocks something else, and a ball rolls across, and it tips something else. The game, you actually set that up, and you'd catch a mouse. It was very simple, but it, certainly for, at that time, as a young man, as a child, it was just amazing to watch it. So those were kind of cool. And then I played the traditional games, Life, Monopoly, Careers was a popular game that I would play back then with my mother, and so we played a lot of board games back then.
Cool beans. And then you said after a while you just recently went from casual to serious gaming. Was there a game that caught your interest that turned you over?
It was a couple of things. One, I had collected games over the years, and they were all sitting in bins in my garage. And I happened to move into a house for the first time, renovated my garage, turned it into a game den, and was able to put all my games on the shelf for the first time. And that was quite satisfying. And then came to find out that a couple of game conventions in the area. I'm in the San Francisco Bay Area. There's a couple of game conventions: PacificCon, DundraCon, and KublaCon. And I'd only been to one game convention many, many years ago, back in the Avalon Con, back in about more than 20 years ago. So I was able to go to that, and then started knowing people in the community. Aldo Ghiazzi's been on the show a couple of times. Aldo and I met, started a gaming group over at my home, would have 20 to 40 people come every other Monday, and started becoming very involved. The game that caught my attention really was Richard Borg is the game designer. Richard's been to my house. He's in Orlando area. Hopefully he's safe with the Hurricane Irma. But Memoir 44, Battle Cry, Command & Colors Ancients, his entire game system really caught my attention because I've always enjoyed the war game side of things. Simple game with dice cards, made it quite easy. But really my favorite game is probably dependent on whoever I'm playing with, and that's what it's become. My game collection has changed over the years because I realized I didn't really need to keep any of these games if I wasn't going to play them. So now we play a lot of games in my home now, but it's really focused around the types of games that I can play with people that I enjoy being with. And so it's not so much the game anymore, it's more about the people who I'm with. So it's been kind of nice. My game selection has changed over the years, although I still have a significant amount of Richard Borg's Command & Colors and Memoir 44 games in my closet.
Cool. I want to say we have one of his games, a Memoir 44. Do you know if there's a Cthulhu rendition of that?
There might be. It would have been recent. I haven't paid attention just recent, but I'm not aware of one. But it's certainly a possibility. The command and color system is quite adaptable. It's been adapted for medieval. It's been adapted for ancients. Obviously, the American Civil War. So I could imagine it be adapted for Cthulhu. But it really is designed as a war game, combat focused, with very little interaction other than fighting. So I'm not sure there's a Cthulhu version.
Cool. I want to say we maybe got one, but haven't got it to the table. Cool. So you said it depends on who you bring to the table. And so let's see here. So do you have a favorite mechanic or whatnot? I know it probably depends on the people, but like, what are a couple of your favorite mechanics of games?
You know, and it's interesting. One of the things I really enjoy about the game industry right now is that we can define games by the mechanics. And when I introduce people to new games, which I do a lot, the thing that you start to introduce as mechanics. So, for example, cooperative mechanic has become so popular, particularly with Matt Leacock, a friend of mine who lives in the area, with his Pandemic series. And I enjoy Pandemic a lot. I have it on my phone. I play it. I probably play it multiple times every day because it's just a great game. So that's one of my favorite for the cooperative. Van Ryder games, AJ, sorry, I forgot your last name. But he's got solo games. So those are interesting popularity. You know, I love Dominion with the deck building. I like Roll for the Galaxy because of the dice component. There's all kinds of different mechanics. And again, it depends on what you want to do and sit down and play. But the mechanics have become so sophisticated that they become so much simpler, yet the game experience has become so much richer. So each game brings its own unique value, and it's been nice. I like to see these different mechanics that are put into play.
Cool, Bean. And you talked to before being famous, or kind of famous, depending on who you talk to, as being the game whisperer. For those that may have not caught your podcast or whatnot, who is the game whisperer besides being you, of course?
Well, the Game Whisperer, I created the Game Whisperer. Here's why, is that in my profession, I work for a very large Fortune 500 company. And I work with executives, teaching them how to use social media, blogging, Twitter, LinkedIn, to have an online presence. Well, in order to learn how to use those tools, I've got to be able to experiment constantly. So many things are happening in the world with social media, and so many of you yourself and listeners. My last episode of my podcast was how to use LinkedIn, right? How to update your LinkedIn profile to make it more effective, more professional. Well, this is what I do for a living, but I have to learn. I have to figure out what works and what doesn't work. Well, I don't want to do that with my actual business account where I have, tens of thousands of people who are paying attention to what I do as if I'm the expert. So the Game Whisperer developed because I wanted a way just to kind of play. What happens if I do this? What happens if you post stuff? What happens if you tie this in? And I got to experiment with video, with Twitter, with Facebook a little bit. And so the Game Whisperer was a persona I developed right about the time I did the podcast to kind of give me the chance of being in the game industry as a separate personality outside of the personality of Richard Bliss. Now the Game Whisperer has kind of dropped off. I used to own GameWhisperer.com. My ex-wife forgot to update the domain name, so some Japanese spam company now owns it. So it's kind of the yes, sometimes you lose things in the divorce. I lost the domain name, so the Game Whisperer has kind of gone away as an entity. But that's kind of how I started that off, is using that as an entity to figure out how this thing was happening. Because in the early days, Kickstarter, crowdfunding, board games, it was very early that those were starting to come together. Now they're so common that I'll ask people every day in my training, who's heard of Kickstarter? Nearly all the hands go up. But when I first started, not a single hand would go up. I can remember going to GenCon a few years ago, and not that many years ago, and walked the aisles with a camera crew and stopped people randomly and said, have you heard of Kickstarter? And not a single person had heard of Kickstarter. Now, who hasn't heard of Kickstarter? I mean, now it's just the opposite. So it was quite amazing. And that was just a couple of years ago.
Well, that's interesting. And so you talk about Kickstarter and your so what is your podcast all about?
The podcast,
for those who haven't listened to it.
Well, it's called Funding the Dream, and you can find it on iTunes. You just type in my name, Richard Bliss, or you type in Funding the Dream. And really, I had never done a podcast before I started. And so the goal was to find a topic that I felt was relevant to the audience, and yet I could bring in something new to the conversation. And I was in the board gaming space. Although Tom Vasle wonders if I actually even play board games. It's always interesting when Tom and I get together because he never sees me play any games. I'm always talking. But one of the things I decided is that what I could bring was a business perspective to this idea of what crowdfunding was. And I've told people on my podcast all the time is that seldom do you have a funding problem. You almost always have a crowd problem. And if you find the crowd, it'll solve the funding. And so what I did is I set up a podcast that would talk to gamers. Now, it's for anybody. I've had some very famous people on my show that had nothing to do with board gaming, but I've also had some famous board gamers on my show. And what it is to teach you how to use these tools to be better at raising money for your crowdfunding project, but then also to build your image, to build your business, the legal aspects, the tax aspects, graphic design, artists, shipping, manufacturing, the whole gambit when it came to that. It's not just about raising money and then making a widget anymore or making a game. There's so many aspects to it. I've had the president, the founders of Panda Games, who are so big in the game manufacturing now. All those been on here from distribution. I've had people from Jamie Stegmaier has multiple times been the co-host with me, who's very popular and very active, or was. He's still active, but he's not doing Kickstarter nearly as much as now. So all of those things help me kind of form this body of work that allows me to help teach people how to take advantage of this crowdfunding thing and raise money for whatever their dream was. You know, it even got me on Good Morning America. I mean, I got on Good Morning America, NBC News here in the San Francisco area, just because this crowdfunding thing was so new. And I was out there helping people talk about it and learn how to actually use it.
Cool. Yeah, I know I'm a big fan of the podcast. Kind of missed you, and as you've been on hiatus a little bit, hopefully it's going to start back up when your busy summer stops.
Yeah, the summer was extremely busy this year, probably more busy than two. A couple of summers ago, I went through a divorce. It came to a dead stop, and there was doubt whether it was even coming back. Then through fans like you and others who reached out on a consistent basis and asked for it to come back, I was able to bring it back. And then this summer, work and life, everything it was extremely busy, and I wasn't able to keep it up. But we are sitting where we are in the first week of September right now. So in the next couple of weeks, you should see several guests. And it'll probably be a bit of a slant away from the board gaming space as I tap into more and more people who are doing things like different types of crowdfunding. I've had people on to talk about Patreon, which has become popular, all kinds of different crowdfunding. So that's what you'll see different things like that, as well as people how to do podcasting, how to do branding, how to use social media, things more around the aspect of the profession that I'm in to help you understand how to take advantage of those. How do you become famous? How do you rise above the noise? And how do you make your content be people aware of your Kickstarter campaign long before you launch it? So that type of content is what you'll see coming out of the podcast.
Oh, well, I'm intrigued. That sounds awesome. So you said look for it in the next couple of weeks?
Yep, next couple of weeks. I have one episode that I haven't published yet. It was done with a person in the tech industry who does a podcast. So we talked about what it takes to put on a podcast, equipment, aspects like that. But then I have a few other guests lined up that have written some books about branding and about your social presence, that type of thing. So we'll have some authors on talking about some of these expertise that they have. So it's that type of, more along the lines of my last episode, which interestingly enough, from a statistical standpoint, did better than almost any episode I've ever put out for the last several years. And that was 5 key elements to making your LinkedIn profile successful. And that one has double the traffic that I would normally get at this time for a podcast. And also my podcast, even though I've been on hiatus, has been getting more listens than I've ever had since I started the podcast 6 years ago.
Well, there you go. Maybe I should take a vacation now. But, yeah, I remember. I feel bad that I listened to your that last episode like twice, and I still haven't. I still haven't updated my LinkedIn. I was worried about I might get a reaming or something. I don't know.
You know, it's really hard. I just came back yesterday from Raleigh, North Carolina, where I taught 100 of our inside sales reps on how to take advantage of LinkedIn and how to use it as a tool. And it was a 3-hour session that I did with them. And I got to tell you, it's not easy. These are people who have a little bit of experience with it, but I had to walk them through updating your summary. Here's how we're going to, and I had them sit there and write a summary right there in class. I gave them 20 minutes. You got 20 minutes, start writing now. And they started writing, and then I made them pass that to the person next to them to do the editing. And then I made that person pass it to the right of them to do editing yet again. It took about 40 minutes of my class because it's so hard to write that summary, because in first person, talking about yourself, here's how I'm wonderful, here's all the wonderful things I've done, here's why you should pay attention to me. That's not in our nature. And so it was something difficult for them that I helped them overcome these inhibitions, because it's not natural for people. How to post content so that it resonates with your audience. And one of the gentlemen posted a piece of content. Today's Friday. That was Wednesday afternoon. He posted it Wednesday afternoon. He texted me last night. He posted a piece of content on LinkedIn. He had 10,300 people look at his piece of content in less than 24 hours. And
oh, wow.
10,000 views in less than 24 hours, using a couple of the tricks and tips that I shared with him. But he put out a very compelling post. It was about 50 words with a very compelling image, and it generated a tremendous amount of traffic. And so it's not easy. Social media is easy. You and I can get on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, whatever, but actually leveraging it to get results can be very difficult, because it's kind of a mindset change. And that's one of the things that I help people do, is overcome that difficulty. And so, yeah, you've listened to the episode twice, and yet it's still difficult to kind of sit down and go through those steps that I've outlined. It is not easy. So you're not alone, Blake. You're not alone.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's good. Yeah. So, let's see. So do you think that would be the next Facebook or whatnot? I know Facebook kind of got replaced. What was it? I forget what it was.
MySpace.
That everybody was using. Yeah, MySpace. Yeah.
No. Is
Facebook,
that
like the next Facebook, do you think?
No, Facebook has, so there's the four big ones: Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Instagram. Each one of them have their own main purpose. When it comes to personal stuff, Facebook is still Facebook. And that's where I'm going to check out my friends. I'm going to see what my family's doing. Facebook is where it's going to be for more activities. LinkedIn is going to be business. And the LinkedIn community is pretty adamant about keeping it as a business-only platform. Don't be posting your pictures of your cat and your dog and your birthday parties. That's for Facebook, and you'll be reprimanded by the audience. Twitter really is a tool for consuming a large amount of content in a hurry. The other day, I had a helicopter over my house. I could not figure out why. It wasn't for me. I was hoping. So how would I find out why there's a helicopter over my house? Well, it was quite easy. I just went to Twitter. And I have a list on Twitter. You can make lists, and it's of 6 leading journalists, news journalists, television news journalists, and their Twitter accounts. And I subscribe to those, and I have them in a single list. I opened up that list, and sure enough, they report the news on a minute-by-minute basis. Now, I'm pretty sure they're not doing it. Their teams are feeding into that, but I knew that. And so I went to Twitter to get real-time information. If you wanted to know what's happening with Hurricane Irma right now, you can go to Twitter to find out the more breaking news, particularly in specific regions. So Twitter it's really that fire hose of content. There's nothing in depth there. Your Instagram, on the other hand, really has become the tool of the new generation of young people who use it to communicate through pictures and hashtags, pictures and hashtags, and that's where a lot of that content goes first. And so the companies and enterprise companies like mine haven't really penetrated the Instagram. They haven't figured it out. But I have a young woman who works in my company down the hall who has 42,000 Instagram followers. She has her own style blog, video blog, YouTube channel. She has people send her content, her product, so that she can do a fashion around wearing a handbag to work or shoes or an outfit, because she's been able to generate that kind of a following. The companies, most enterprises like I work for, have not figured that out. And then there you have YouTube, and YouTube's kind of unique. So I have a daughter, she's 18, she does a YouTube channel. She'll get 50 to 60,000 views on her YouTube videos. Holy cow, that's more. That's way more than I ever get. And that's because she takes My Little Pony, mashes it up and lip syncs it to Hamilton, the soundtrack. So she has My Little Pony do Alexander Hamilton. And they sing the songs, and it's quite cool. And so people really like that. And she's got 1,100 people who subscribe to her YouTube channel. And so that...
So what would that channel be? What's that channel called? So if anybody's interested.
Tangerine Blast. So if you go out to YouTube and type in Tangerine Blast, you can see all her videos that she's done. She just did one, the Batman movie. She made My Little Pony do Batman.
Oh, wow, cool. My daughters would probably like that.
They would. They'd
That's
probably enjoy
cool.
the Hamilton, or she just did Moana. Moana's gotten 70,000 views. That one's done quite well. So You're Welcome. Dwayne Johnson, The Rock, sings You're Welcome. Well, she has My Little Pony. The main character, the big bad guy, the serpent guy, I don't even know what he's called. He sings. He sings You're Welcome. He acts as Maui, the demigod. So this is so I mean, when we talk about the different channels and everything that's going on, there's a huge difference between each one and what you're capable of doing. And young people coming up are finding ways to do this differently. Companies are always slow to adopt that, which is why I sit in the space that I am. I teach individuals how to take advantage of these new tools and get themselves a little ahead of the curve. And that's starting to be some of the stuff that I'm covering in my podcast.
Cool. Yeah, I'm excited. So going back to LinkedIn and gaming, how do you think that applies to gaming and gamers out there, or does it?
It kind of does in the way that so they haven't quite, I got to be careful here, but I don't think they've quite tapped into and figured out how to use LinkedIn and gaming. Except for their gaming groups, but it's mostly active on Facebook. For example, we'll take Jamie Stegmaier for example. Jamie creates a Facebook page for each one of his games. And so it becomes quite easy for you to stay in contact with him, stay up to date with everything that's happening because it's through Facebook. LinkedIn, there are LinkedIn groups, but I think the Facebook groups for the gaming community are so much stronger. But there is now so much money pouring into the space of board games through Kickstarter that I suspect that you'll start to see more and more business discussions about how Kickstarter is affecting different industries, and that board games is becoming more of a legitimate industry. Not that it wasn't a legitimate industry, but it's moving out of the hobby space and now more into mainstream, where Big Bang Theory will have games on it. So many of the popular TV shows will feature a game somewhere, an Easter egg type game somewhere in the episode or somewhere on the show. And it's starting to become very common. Cards Against Humanity, Max Temkin and his group of friends who created Cards Against Humanity. I can stop any college student and ask them if they've heard of Cards Against Humanity, and every single one of them will say yes. Older people don't understand what that phenomenon's all about, not realizing that crowdfunding and Kickstarter has permeated so far into the college scene, while investors and equity crowdfunding, they think they're ahead of the curve when they don't realize what's been happening on the crowdfunding side when it comes to things like Kickstarter, and so much money's pouring into that.
Yeah, definitely. So let's see here, and just so you know, I didn't discuss it before, and I don't know if you've heard the podcast, but the next portion on the podcast is called AAA. Don't worry, it's a family podcast, so it's not Alcoholics Anonymous. It's actually the Adventures in Application Acquisition. Now, is there an app you use a lot of? It doesn't have to be tied to board gaming. A while back ago, we had somebody on that had a travel app or whatnot. Is there an application you use a lot of that we can talk about for a minute?
Yeah, there's several. So an app that I use a lot is called Get Pocket. And G-E-T. Well, actually, it's just called Pocket in the App Store, I think. But the URL on the website is Get, G-E-T-P-O-C-K-E-T, Get Pocket. That's one of my more popular ones. And what else do I use? I use, obviously, the game that I play on a regular basis is Pandemic, simply because I can play it by myself. It takes me about 10 minutes, and I can just whip through it. But Get Pocket is a big one. And the reason is because what it does is, in my business, I spend a lot of time sharing content, commenting, using social media, finding content. And the hard part is to figure out what to share on your social media. What do you put on your Twitter account? What do you put on your Facebook? What do you put on your LinkedIn? And Get Pocket, what it allows me to do is I'm surfing the web on my browser or on my phone. I can, with a click of a button, save that website, that story, to Pocket. And then if I'm on my phone, so here's what I do. During the day, I will just casually read. I'll see a story I like. I see it on LinkedIn or Facebook or something. I save it to Get Pocket. On Sunday evenings, I open up Pocket on my computer, and here's all the stories that I've saved. And I go through them, and I've been able to tag them. And now I create content for social media on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter, and then load that up into something called Buffer. And Buffer it's also an app on my phone. It forms a buffer of content, and it spreads out the posting of that content throughout the week. That way I can stay active on social without having to constantly be on my phone. I queue most of it up on Sunday night, out it goes. if somebody responds during the week, I get notifications, so I'm able to respond right there, but I don't have to worry about finding and sharing content all in real time. So Get Pocket is an app that I use significantly to curate and keep all of this content organized so that I can be sharing content from board games to artificial intelligence to social media or whatever the interest might be.
Wow, that's interesting. So Get Pocket gets the information, and then Buffer helps you share it. Is that correct?
That's correct. So Get Pocket queues it all up, and then Buffer is the app that I use, and also the website and a plugin for my Chrome extension that allows me to queue that up and spread that out over time.
And are those available on any tablets, phones,
Yep.
Anything? Or
Yep.
is that something you can get on the computer too, or is it just an application?
No, you can get it on the computer, which makes it nice, because then when I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on LinkedIn, and somebody shared a cool story, and I'm like, oh, that's great. I want to write about that, or I want to share that later. So what I do is I just click up in the corner on my browser bar, it just has a Pocket icon. I'll just click Pocket. It'll grab it, it'll allow me to put in a tag, and it saves it to Pocket. Within seconds, I can go to my phone, open up my Pocket app, and there it is, and I can read it offline. So, for example, I was just on a flight. I can read it on my flight on my phone, go back and read it, or I can open it on the computer, both back and forth, easily allowing me to do that.
Cool. That's awesome. So, Richard, if you owned the rights to either of those applications, what would be one thing you would do to improve them?
One thing to do to improve them. Wow, both of them are doing a pretty good job of meeting their need. One would be to allow me to, the Get Pocket would be allow me to integrate a little bit tighter with social media. Although it does an okay job, I'd like to be able to integrate even tighter with social media so that I could queue that up. But right now, they're both doing a pretty good job for what I need them to do. So I'm not complaining. They're doing a good job. I'll tell you another product I use a lot. And I have it on my phone as well. And that's called the Rev.com. REV.com. And what Rev is, it's recordings. It allows you to record on the phone, on the app. Or, for example, we could take this recording that we're doing with this show, and you just upload it to the site. Or if you have it on your phone, you just record it, and then you just hit the button, and it sends it to the site. And then for $1 a minute, it'll transcribe the whole conversation for you. Word for word.
Well, there you go.
Within 24 hours. And so if you wanted to, you could actually, you want to turn your podcast into a blog, they've launched a new site. I don't have an app for it called Temi, TEMI.com. And they do it for 10 cents a minute, but it's a machine that does it. The $1 a minute one does it for humans. And so, if my podcast is 20 minutes. And so it's one of the things I've been looking at is the ability to take my podcast and turn it into a text so people can search it, read it offline, and not have to listen to it, but they can actually read it. So those are a couple of the apps that I'm using.
Well, there you go. That's awesome. Cool. Yeah, we'll make sure we leave all those in the show notes and whatnot. So if somebody wants to find you, minus coming there to California to stalk you at your home, how would they go about doing it?
Well, find me online or find me in person.
I guess either or, mainly online. You probably don't want them coming to your home to stalk you, but...
No, probably not. But online, it's Richard Bliss. Google me at Richard Bliss. I think I'm 6 or 8 of the top 10 hits on Google. There's this guy I hate, Richard Bliss Brooks. And he constantly uses Richard Bliss as his name, although his name's Richard Brooks. But Richard Bliss on Twitter, Richard Bliss on Facebook, Richard Bliss in LinkedIn, although you can just type in, I think it's LinkedIn/in/Bliss. Richard Bliss on Instagram. Those are all the different ways you can easily find me on social. Just Richard Bliss.
Cool. Okay, cool, Beans. Well, we really appreciate you coming on Getting Geeky with Game Relief. And yeah, we'll look for the podcast to come back online and make sure we're sharing about that. Yeah, because we really enjoy it. I know I do, at least.
Well, I appreciate that, and I appreciate the invitation to come on here and just kind of talk about some random stuff. Hopefully, I've been a good guest. Have I done okay?
I think so. Yeah. I kind of get like a while back ago. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but they're pretty fun. They're pretty famous, or they do pretty good on Patreon. But when I was looking through the role playing games, I found on the Patreon, I found the Glass Cannon podcast, and a while back ago I had somebody who I thought was pretty famous after listening to it on the show or whatnot. But yeah, I guess it's not as hard to talk to famous people as I would have suspected. So
no, it's quite
hopefully
easy.
I did a good job.
It's quite easy. They're fairly normal people. So, and they usually have something hopefully useful to say. And I think this has been kind of fun. Hopefully I've shared something useful, maybe some insights.
I believe so. Yeah, I really like the applications and stuff, and just the way that you can use the different applications, and also the way gaming has changed, as well as Kickstarter. That's awesome. Yeah, and we'll make sure we watch out for your podcast and make sure we share that with our community as well. We really appreciate it, Richard.
Blake, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Welcome to Getting Geeky with Game Relief. Today it's Kickstarter Corner. You were right if you guessed it. We're going to be talking about my dogs, my cats, and me. Daddy designed and daughter approval. So, it is about dogs and cats and you. So, journey home with your favorite pets. Daddy designed, a daughter approved. My cats, my dogs, and me is set to become a new family classic. Read more. So they end on Wednesday, December 27th, 2017. So let's hope that we can get them to their goal. Please give them like a pledge. Please, 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 please. It will make my day.
Next on our Kickstarter docket is a game called Paws Against Humanity by Rocco Racktown. Like Cards Against Humanity is for humans, Paws Against Humanity is for furries. A game for the cringiest of furries. Check out this game on Kickstarter. Right now they've pledged $101 out of $25,000 goal. They have 46 days to go. So if you're tied up for Christmas, don't worry, because they're actually going through the 28th of January. Check it out on the Kickstarter and make sure you back the game.
Hey, it's Jake here with the Squatch team. We just launched our brand new board game on Kickstarter. It combines a lot of skill with a little luck to create the most unique board game you will ever play. Visit Kickstarter.com and type Squatch in the search bar to find us.
Don't forget to check out our other people in our network. Check out Ryan over at thegiveawaygeek.com. Lots of great giveaways going on there. Also, the Board Game News with Helena. Check them out, as well as Logan Chop's reviews. Make sure you like his Facebook page and subscribe to his YouTube channel. I know I like it, and I know you will too. Now, on with the end of the show. Also, would you like to hear Getting Geeky with Game Relief talk about your game? Make sure you send me an email at gamerelief@gamereliefgo.com or message me on Facebook, and we'll go ahead and see what we can do to get you spotlighted or interview you on the show. Okay, now what do? We got to sign off?
Goodbye and goodbye.
Yeah, we'll catch you all on the
flip side.
Gamer Leaf levels up. Tune in next week to see if Gamer Leaf's luck holds up.